Green 2.0 is a diverse working group of more than 20 leaders from various sectors in the environmental arena. We advocate for accelerating efforts to diversify the mainstream environmental movement. I went to the annual dinner of an esteemed and very successful national environmental group, and I was the guest at one of the leaders of that, and I looked around the ballroom at the Washington Hilton. I get a little bored at dinners. And it was an extremely well-attended evening, well more than 1,200 people. And I could not identify a person of color other than the servers. And obviously, Hispanics may be of any race, and to be careful about third-party identification, but you get my point. And I spent an enormous amount of time in not-for-profit advocacy and supporting international and national not-for-profits, but this was exceptional in its lack of diversity, and it caused me to do a little investigation to figure out, is this the norm, is this not the norm? And the short version, at least anecdotally, is it's too much of the norm. So obviously there are significant exceptions to this in much of the sector, but it's too much of the norm. And I took my own money and commissioned a report, a scholarly report from Dr. Dorceta Taylor at the University of Michigan to help give us some empiricism, a baseline of what the status was in the environmental sector so we could get beyond anecdote. And she is as is her style, put forth a professional report which demonstrated what many of us already know, that with significant exceptions, the state of diversity in the leadership ranks in the environmental sector, public and private, is not where many of us would like it to be.
The key to success of Green 2.0 is not only diversifying the leadership and staff, but also the communication strategies of the mainstream environmental movement.
This particular initiative is one that's very near and dear to my heart. It's one of the reasons that I got into the environmental work is because we saw the need to be able to diversify the conversation. There are so many communities that are still in need, and I think it's important to make sure that as members of the government that we have staffs that represent and can speak for communities all across the country, particularly when it comes to our decision making. And so the Green 2.0 initiative helps us do that. It lets us know where we are, how far we've come, how far we have to go. And this is an initiative that we take very seriously at EPA.
So EPA is committed to making a visible difference in communities across the country. We have to bring the benefits of clean air and clean water to those who need it most, to those who we need their voices to be heard, and to those who we need not just to listen, but to take action. That is what diversity means to me and to Gwen and to the other thousands of people at EPA who are committed to protecting the public health in every community that we serve. But one of the most important things that we need to do is to be accountable for those efforts. It's great to put tools on the table. It's great to do the outreach. But if somebody isn't counting every day about whether that work is making a difference, then you're not going to make the difference that you need to make.
Our hope at GuideStar is that we're able to play a role using our scale to gather that data, to be able to have a much more grounded conversation about how not just the environmental movement, but all nonprofit organizations can reflect the communities that they serve.
As part of the Green 2.0 initiative, GuideStar added a new set of questions on our website that nonprofits can answer, talking about the diversity across a number of different dimensions of their staff, boards, and volunteers. So we're trying to use our scale as a platform to bring much better data to the conversation about diversity in the nonprofit sector broadly and the environmental movement in particular.
Well, I think the work of the D5 Coalition is really helping to strengthen philanthropy by efforts to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as I mentioned, this has been a conversation and work that's been going on in the field for decades, but it's time for it to be adopted as part of the central DNA of good philanthropic impact. And so we're here to build on the work that has gone on to help an increasing number of foundations really adopt good practice, look at their own leadership, and really understand the communities in which they're increasingly investing.
So I'm participating in this forum because I believe that for the benefit of the green movement, that we need to diversify in the areas of national green groups, funders, and the people in the work in the administration, the government, to make sure that we have a diversity of thought and more effective outreach, that we represent America.
Environmental challenges today are increasingly global and transboundary. Environmental resources are arguably most crucial for developing countries who depend on these resources. Working on conservation in remote areas often requires working with marginalized groups, and working overseas on these issues offers us perspectives and insights into how we might face these challenges in the United States.
When we think about the environmental movement and action that needs to happen now, and I think this clearly came across. And for me, with the work that we do internationally on environmental issues, more and more Americans want to be engaged internationally and want to learn from what's happening in other countries and bring that back to the United States. So ultimately, they say that experience makes them a better U.S. citizen and a better global citizen.
I think diversity requires a multifaceted approach. I think it's critically important to have efforts like GuideStar's partnership with Green 2.0 and D5 to really develop much more of the baseline, the data collection that's critical in terms of us actually having a sense of what we look like now, and us having a framework to measure ourselves against. But numbers are only a part of it. The other part of it is really around substance and program, and how can we ensure that the work that we are focused on is work that is relevant, is work that is serving of the broad communities of America, and in particular the communities that are in most need. I feel so strongly as a relatively new mother about making sure that the world that my daughter inherits is a brighter world than the one that I had. But you know what? When Robert gave his remarks about walking into this ballroom and not seeing a lot of people that look like him in a sea of 1,000 people, that was exactly the same story I had 15 years ago when I first joined the Environmental Grantmakers Association. So clearly, the progress that we've made, and I think we have made progress, is not sufficient. The results from the Green 2.0 analysis have demonstrated that. But I'll be damned if I leave the world for my daughter in the same place that I found it. I will be damned if I allow her in 20 years to walk into a ballroom and to feel like she doesn't belong. That is not the world that I'm going to leave her, and with all of our help, we're going to get there. Thank you very much.